I just wanted to talk today about how I used van life to escape the 9 to 5 grind and lessons from van life that I think can help anyone to escape whatever bad situation they may be in, and how the desire to bring that freedom to as many people possible led me and my friend to want to create Boundless Society, a community designed to help people escape the 9 to 5 grind, live a little lighter on the environment, and have the freedom to actually invest in themselves and truly thrive. Like everyone listening out there, I was told that the path to success is hard work and education. So I wasn't too surprised when I started out my career journey working a crappy retail job that wasn't very enjoyable, and I dealt with raging, demanding customers all day. But like I said, I wasn't too worried at this point because I was only 16 years old and I hadn't even graduated high school. Surely, once I start getting some experience under my belt and getting some education, then I probably will have a great career that's very fulfilling. Unfortunately, things didn't quite go that way, and several menial, low-paying jobs later, I realized job experience wasn't quite enough, so I enrolled full-time in my local community college. The first year attending college while living off my savings was amazing. I could spend all the time I needed to learning and grasping subjects, and that first year I was on Dean's List, and I even got a 4.0 one semester. But as they say, nothing lasts forever, including my savings. And since I refused to take on any debt to go to school, I ended up going back to work full time. Unfortunately, this caused my grades to tank. I no longer had time to really study, so I found myself just skimming over readings, answer hunting, using clip notes, that type of stuff. I found that once the final was over, I hadn't retained any of that information that I had put in so much time and work and paid money to learn. The part I found especially disappointing was that my grades now would affect my opportunities later on in my educational career, and it sucked because I felt like this was not a representation of my abilities. It was just a representation of my resources. I've always been a person who really values education and took a lot of effort to educate myself. Ever since I was a kid, I've been reading tons and tons of books, and when I went into the workplace, my coworkers, who were doctors and nurses, thought I was pursuing an advanced degree. And so I said to myself, if I'm that educated that people think that, why do I have to go to school for several years and spend lots and lots of money to get a quote-unquote education? At one point, one of my bosses even suggested trying to get an honorary degree, but again, that just felt like paying to be in this club in order to be considered worthy or intelligent, when clearly I could already display those qualities through my work. This burned extra bad because I saved that particular foundation a ton of money by covering for a coworker who went on maternity leave who happened to have a master's degree. So here I was yet again doing work that I was being told I wasn't qualified to do. It just got really frustrating, and it led to me also being really burned out because I was doing a ton of work and not being adequately compensated. And while I did get a lot of raises there, my pay rate definitely did not keep pace with the increase in responsibilities that I had once they realized how capable I was. Also, right around this time, I conveniently developed a crippling consumer / climate / waste guilt. We had a bad summer like never before where the skies were filled with smoke. It was during the time of the California wildfires, and I was literally wondering, like, is there ever going to be clean air here to breathe again? Like, that's how bad it was. And I remember feeling so bad for, like, the animals that are trapped outside and people who are trapped outside. And every move I made after that, I just kept asking myself, what percentage of the decisions that I make reflects that that is a really important thing in my life, like one of the most important things. And I couldn't really put a number on it. When I wanted to go to the store, I drove. Sometimes I drove places where I didn't have a choice, like to work. I went to the grocery store and I tried to buy things that weren't wrapped in plastic. And if I want to buy something that's not a fruit or vegetable, it's probably going to be wrapped in plastic. And as if I wasn't already freaking out enough with my work situation, school situation, and consumer situation. On top of that, my housing situation decided to go to heck. I had been living in this house that was on the same parcel as an apartment building and owned by the same individual. Unfortunately, this person started to have paranoid thoughts that the tenants were conspiring against him, and it became pretty quickly apparent that he not only was dealing with some mental health issues, but he also had some substance issues, which led to a lot of the people who moved into the apartment in front of me dealing with the same kind of issues, which is, understandable. But when you have a lot of people with the same type of problems in one place, it tends to amplify the situation, and that's exactly what happened. So at the point where the property owner's paranoia reaches its peak, he tells us that he wants to evict us in order to move into the house to keep an eye on the tenants in the building adjacent. Now, we were on a month-to-month lease, so legally he only had to give us 20 days notice to vacate that property. But fortunately, at the time, I had begun building a school bus. And in the beginning, it was just a recreational vehicle, to go up to the mountains, chase some pow. As time went on, it began to look more and more appealing to me. Also because at the time, I had just been through a bike accident, which left me having to leave my job. Also, I had chipped both my front teeth, so I was not feeling very confident going into like interviews and such. Then on top of that, this housing insecurity situation. And I was very leery about signing a lease because I had just gotten out of this unbearable situation. And I remembered thinking, what if we did have a lease? But then on the same token, I felt like, well, we lived there for 2 years and we were able to be kicked out in 20 days. There were really no protections for us. And I just was not feeling going back into a situation like that. So I decided, forget it. I'm just going to move into my bus. And flash forward 4 years later, I have reconnected with my community, met tons of awesome people who have supported me along the way of building this huge project. I have the freedom to decide if a situation, whether it's a work situation or a living situation, is toxic and leave that situation without having to consider the financial consequences as my main priority, as opposed to consequences to my health and well-being or safety. I've also been able to educate myself. I taught myself software development, and I probably never would have been able to do financially if I was in a place paying rent every month. Let's talk about the cons of this lifestyle and why I think that van life on its own is not a solution to getting out of the 9-to-5 grind. So for starters, living off grid can be a job in itself. Taking responsibility for transporting your water, transporting your wastewater, providing yourself with power, and lots of the other really hard to provide things in a tiny space can be extremely time consuming and not very accessible. Secondly, the costs associated with building your own home on wheels, especially if you want it to be independent of the grid, can be very expensive. And then time and learning investment also has to be considered. Third is harassment. You experience a lot of harassment living, pretty much any way that is not strictly like house, car, job, mainstream lifestyle. But there are a lot of laws and recourse in place for people to harass you, frankly, when you live this lifestyle. With that being said, I see Boundless Society as a stopgap on all of those issues. So for people who want to live a light lifestyle, Boundless Society, the idea is to share resources and share what the community has to offer. And that's something that I saw when I built my bus, and it would never have been possible without community offering to help me, offering to share tools with me, offering know-how. And I want to be able to recreate the magical possibilities that building a bus kind of exposed me to, that if you're willing to do something, there are people who are willing to help you. And a lot of people have yet to experience that. And I think of, what contribution could those people make to society if they weren't busy grinding away at a 9-to-5 job? So hopefully that's given you a little insight into Boundless Society, what we're all about, and what our goals are for the future. If any of this sounds interesting to you or you have any contributions, feel free to comment, like, subscribe, and share it in any channels or communities you feel it might be relevant. Also, most importantly, stay tuned for more because we're going to continue to talk about our goals, what we're doing to try and get this kickstarted, our vision for this project as time goes on. Great stuff. So thanks for listening. Bye-bye.